A la comida
We're
expertas en movilidad.
you to this meal with people expert in sustainability, mobilization, so the access of this Congress here. So we want to greet all of you and of course to the people who are looking at us through the screen from this Jauregia room from the Euskalduna Palace in Bilbao, when we are enjoying from a light meal, really delicious, really tasty. So enjoy your meal. Thank you so much to all of you. And a meal while we are listening, while we are debating, starting with the technological and strategical solutions that they are going to present us. And we have to start with the analysis of the data, the ethical and intelligent data of this mobility service and of the cities. So please, I remind you that you can
A las que vamos a escuchar a continuación, tanto ustedes que están aquí en esta sala como las personas.
So both of you who are here, welcome to all of you, to the people who are with us, to the people who are through the streaming, through the streaming. I'm losing the sound. I'm so sorry. We have to talk about the new mobility of the present and of the future. We have there the new lecturer, Josu Ramirez, who's going to talk about the effect that electrification of the mobile park in Euskadi, in the Basque Country, can have. So the floor is yours. Good morning. Yeah, okay, thank you. Good morning and enjoy your meal. You are really very bold. Coming really to spoil your meal with so many informations. We have bet on the table who's going to succeed in you swallowing. There are doctors here, so don't worry. We had made a work for the leather company, and we made a work for the Basque government. We'll get the calculation of the externalities of the transport, the external costs of the transport. Those costs as both mobility and transport have, and some people say nobody pays for it, and many say all of us pay for it. Those are negative consequences, and we have to work in order to alleviate them. With the Basque government, we made the assessment and the calculation of the external costs, and everything I'm going to tell is something from ours. The Basque government has nothing to do. So, if your food gets swallowed in you, it doesn't matter. It's my fault. We have made the mobilization of transport where we are using big data, ticketing, lots of data, and we make a mobilization which is able to reproduce our mobility in present and future scenarios. So in the external and variable costs, when we are moving and removing the infrastructures, as you see here, the big accumulator of external costs are the private vehicle for the mobility of people, neither wares or goods, no other ways of transport. So a private vehicle, personal mobility. So you can see that the effects that are more negative and that can be alleviated or ameliorated by the motorization and the improvement of our vehicles is the climate change, pollution, accidents, congestions, and the other indirect effects of transport will not be affected. Therefore, with the new technology of the engines, what we are going to have is a change in reducing the climate change and pollutions, which are two different factors. The environment, in the environmental issues, we say we have to make the least possible consumption, and the electrical engine is much more efficient than the other engine because the energy it consumes is lesser. There is no friction, as you know. There are two elements that affect our health derived from transport: the nitrogen dioxide and microparticles. What happens with the nitrogen? Motors have evolved very much. The standards Europe really is binding us to use has made us to use much cleaner energy. So even in the oil and the diesel, they have very few emissions. Well, they have reduced very much the emission of nitrogen. The electrical has got zero. obviously. If we are talking about the microparticles, what the engines are emitting, so for instance, the oil has always had less, and the diesel that started from a situation with many more emissions than the others has improved the technologies until reducing them very much, and the electrical one has got an involvement in the microparticles, because you know that the microparticles are something that is on the floor. Not everything comes from the vehicles, and when the vehicles circulate, really there is a cloud of dust, and we are breathing the PM10 and the PM2, and this is what is damaging the health. And between 65% and 60% of the impact on the health depends on microparticles and not nitrogen. So it is very important to reduce the microparticles. Diesel has taken away what has to do with its engine, and the vehicles, what it remains, it is left for them is really the brake and also the friction with the asphalt, and what it has to do with the tire. So these microparticles that are emitted are issued, but all the engines are located on the floor, and they are, of course, they are lifted when we circulate. So with the most modern vehicles, with the last motorizations, you see that we have just 100% gas oil. So the electrical one doesn't emit anything at all, but it has got tires and brakes, and the asphalt wears it out. So, and then there are similar effects with other particles. So regarding the health, we still have got the problem with the microparticles. We are going to reduce it very much, but we have a problem. If we go to the climate change, the CO2 emissions has got to do with the climate change, not directly with the citizens, but of course the climate change is going to provoke some effects on the health. So we find as oil, diesel, hybrid fuels have got emissions of CO2, and in the electrical engine apparently zero when it moves. Its fuel when it is traveling is issuing 002. And in the vehicles, the CO2 that are issued cannot be considered just when it is moving. It has got a complete life. We have to manufacture it. So diesel and oil, we introduce CO2. Those are the average emissions in the life of a vehicle. In the total life of a vehicle, the diesel and oil is what it is emitted in the CO2 because of the fuel. But there are other elements emitting CO2. So the productive energy necessary to move the vehicle is an emission of CO2. This is the orange part in my diagram. The production of energy for the electrical vehicle, really on the right, we only have got the data of Australia. If coal would be the only item to produce electricity, we would have this bar on the left, which is the high, and the lowest interprets that if all the electricity we produce would be sustainable, the result would be this one. But there is something we can't forget: to produce, to manufacture the vehicle also emits CO2, and also to take it to the dismantling produces CO2 too. And we have got in the electrical vehicle a problem with the batteries. Those are not nuclear waste, but almost like this. What happens with the production of energy in the mainland? We have been transforming. We have gone from these centers of carbon, but nowadays 25% of the energy we produce, more or less, is issuing CO2. So then we would have to achieve a transition. And this bar says nowadays in the mainland of Spain, the production of energy that we are generating has got those sources. We'll see them later. If the electrical car turns up, we will need at least 15% more of energy. We have to produce more energy to feed these electrical vehicles, and we would love this energy to be renewable. And we would love, because otherwise there is no effect, there is no reduction, that the electrical energy that is produced, we would transfer it to some sources of renewable electrical production. Therefore, we should increase our present production in the mainland of electricity through sources of renewable energy. We should increase it by 50%, perhaps a little bit more, if we want that in this electrical vehicle the effect in the climate change takes place. This is an example of the Spanish electrical network in a normal day. You see on the left, this is the night where we consume less, and the day, which kind of energies do we have, what are we producing with, and which is the kind of transition we can make. What we want to remove is this carbon in combined cycle. This is producing CO2, so we would like to remove that because this is an important part of the production of our electrical energy. The cogeneration produced in the big companies is very well made the most of. Perhaps there is still any company that has to go up to this technology, but as it is a very important source of income, it will be there. Hydroelectric, almost all our rivers have got a dam, so there are steps, for instance, in every river, so there is very little to do in hydroelectric production. Solar production, there we can really increase very much this production of renewable energy, but you see that the effect takes time at certain times of the days. When we do not storage energy, we cannot produce electricity with the midnight sun, but we can charge our cars at night with the sun because they are parked in our garage. So the wind energy, we can produce more. This is a very variable energy, so when it fails, we do not know what to do. And of course, there is no government, at least in this country, that is suggesting to have more nuclear plants. So what is going to happen with external costs? We go to the variable ones in the transports and also the vehicles in the Basque Autonomous Community. Nowadays, we have got 254 million per year of externalities. If we go to a scenario where we renew completely the present fleet of vehicles of oil and diesel, efficient and modern, the reduction in the external costs are really very, very remarkable. We talk about 327. If we talk about the electrification of the fleet of the park, the reduction is even bigger, so with 570. But how are we going really to jump like this? What are we going to do so that we can transfer the mobility of the private vehicle to another modality? We see the relative costs of every kind of private vehicle. The motorcycle really doesn't seem to be the most adequate. It doesn't seem to be the most adequate thing to make a transference here. The collective transport is the one we should turn to. So with the present fleet, this is the 100% of external costs we have, summing up cost, car, passengers. I'm talking about personal mobility. If we are talking about combustion vehicles, efficient and modern, we are talking about 88, so a reduction of 12%. And if we talk about the complete renewal, we are talking about 70%. So when we are renewing the complete fleet and we are talking about decarbonization in 30 years' time, the effect of the external cost will be 27%, and we will reduce 73%. So please stop, swallow. This is the slide where you can get stuck. In 30 years, we are going to reduce the 27% external cost of transports, but in the last 20 years, we have increased 30% the number of kilometers we run with or we drive with our vehicles. We have increased 30% the kilometers we travel in collective transport, but we have increased also 30% the time we drive with our private cars. So if we go back in 20 years to grow 30% again with the kilometers we do, we still have a very big problem. So there's no alternative. But we have got wonderful technology which is going to help us, which are a wonderful push to improve the health of our citizens and to try to fight against the climate change, which is a very serious and global problem. But we cannot neglect, not even for a second, and I'm talking here not just for selling my company, well, maybe in the last minute a little bit of marketing, otherwise I will be dismissed. We still have to make a very big effort in the planning of mobility and urbanism in this thing which is not so sexy, that is to take political decisions that can be against the wishes of the citizens. So decisions difficult to make and difficult to face, but they are going to be profitable. We shouldn't be blind with technology. It should be our support, but let's be aware of the fact that we still have got a lot of work to do in this problem we have got with this trend. Enjoy your meal. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Josu. Well, nobody has swallowed anything. I think nobody has got stuck. Okay, the overview you are presenting, well, all of us are aware that we must make many efforts in order to reach these decarbonation decisions, difficult of being taken. Perhaps our next lecturers, through the analysis that they have made and the presentation they have made, are channeled in the same direction, so extracting the same conclusions. I'm going to introduce them to you. Jordi Hereu, former mayor of Barcelona, and Clara Sanchez, responsible for indices of Indexity Consulting, and they are going to present to us the second edition of the Index of Mobility of the Spanish citizens. And the data can be inspected in their platform, and it's going to be exciting to listen to them, and also for you to see and to know what has been done until now and what we are still lacking in sustainable mobility. So please, very welcome, and looking forward to listen to you. Yeah. Okay, Vanessa, thank you so much. It's been thrilling. I don't know whether it's going to be thrilling, but I hope it's going to be interesting at least. I'm here as really the presenter or the moderator of Clara Sanchez, who's going to explain the index of sustainable mobility of Spanish cities. I only wanted to introduce very briefly the company Density. It is a strategic consultancy of cities and territories. We have been trying to help for 10 years, trying to get involved in the transformation to the objectives of sustainable development of cities and territories. And we think that the best way of helping is trying to help to think strategically in the cities and territories. So we have been doing many different things for 10 years, such as helping in the strategical plan of the city of Valencia or also the city of Pamplona to help to the development of competitiveness of cities in Colombia, for instance, to generate strategies of internationalization and positioning of a city such as Madrid, or to be the technical secretary that this event that Pretornor and the Town Hall of Bilbao have launched and are fostering. So we have been working for 10 years in strategies in order to improve our cities and territories. One of the things that we do is that in the last 4 years, there are index of the performance of cities. So we try to measure and to evaluate and to analyze the behavior, the performance of the cities in different dimensions. And we have made index applied to the smart city dimension, to the dimension of economic competitiveness of cities, accessibility, and also we have made 2 works about the index of sustainable mobility, and today we have introduced the second version, and we do not do it on our own. We always do it with an alliance. And in this index 21, this index of mobility, we try to apply these criteria that are in the Zoom, and we have applied it to the analysis of 82 Spanish cities, and also to 7 areas of integrated transport, which are the 3 Basque cities, and also Barcelona, Valencia, Madrid, and Seville. And this is what we wanted to share with you. We explained this to you, and it is true that from the index onwards, we have elaborated a digital platform where all this data and many other things can be seen from this month onwards. And this platform is called Tidigo. Thank you so much. And the star is Clara Sanchez, so I give the floor to her. Thank you so much, Jordi. Okay. How has it been built? We have been working for 11 months when 15 professionals of our consultancy firm have been working on articulating those elements that have made possible not only 1 but 2 index of mobility. On the one hand, the one of the cities and the ATPs. We have followed the 3 systematic axes of the Zoom, following the conceptual frame of our first edition of this index of mobility with 38 great performance indicators, and in the ATPI also a group. We have consulted more than 400 databases, information sources, and we have got the support of experts on mobility, terms of accessibility, gender, perspective, different layers of the geography of mobility in Spain. And also we have been able to work with the open databases and the ones that have been given to us by the people who have cooperated with us, and this has allowed us to process more than 35 million of data. From our technological, methodological innovations, the most important ones is the construction of this concept of the ATPIs. I told you that we had two indexes, the one of the cities and the one of the ATPI. We have defined the integrated public transport areas in order to understand the intermunicipal relationships of these intermodal nodes. Asking where does public transport ticket allow me to travel. So in this way, we really achieve to understand what the dynamics of trips are made within the framework of these intermunicipal conditions we are working with. Another innovation are the new innovation sources and the new techniques of data treatment. We have been working with GTFS data, what allows us to geolocate our data. So in this way, we are not only working with indicators that allow us to take a picture that is unique of a specific phenomena, taking into account that it has got a uniform distribution in the territory. No, with this one, we have got a much upfront view of the data, and we can see how the different phenomena are distributed, allocated, the lack of symmetries regarding the distribution of services or the demand of these services or the conditions even of the physical structure of the territory that depend on that condition, the transport and the trips. And we also made the most in order to improve our methodologies and to integrate new methodologies of triangle of databases. So in this jigsaw of the mobility, we have included these parts, integrating databases from different sources, but always guarantee that the methodology has to be homogeneous in such a way that we can fill this jigsaw of information. The question is, how can we measure the performance of the cities? The goal of an index is to measure how a city behaves opposite to some thresholds of fulfilling. So we are not interested in this stage to measure how a city is compared to another one. We don't want to compete. We just want to improve. We just want to go in the direction of the sustainable mobility, and that's why we have defined filling thresholds for all these criteria. Which are the criteria? Institutional one. In September last year, the World Organization of the Health examined the levels of pollution considered to be dangerous for the health. And in this dimension of environmental sustainability, we have evaluated 6 parameters, including dioxide of nitrogen, as Joshua has said in the previous lecture. And we have evaluated what the cities look like fulfilling these parameters. And when we are going to talk about the findings, we are going to see what happened with the Spanish cities regarding this. The second level is the one of no one is left behind. And this comes from the definition of this Organization of the United Nations to leave no one behind. So this is an exercise where we have tried to take all these cities to the fulfillment of these thresholds defined for these indicators. And when neither of these previous thresholds can be applied, we do it in a self-referential way, and we identify this from a sampling of our cities, which is the best example of this performance. We identify which is the direction and where do we have to go, so that all the cities as a whole can really fulfill these thresholds of compliance. What does this allow us? We are using also traffic lights. All the indicators have got different units of measures, and we have to translate these results in a scale that can be comparable and can be understanding, and we call this homogenization. So this makes that every indicator disregarding the measure of movement can be equaled in a scale from 0 to 100, and in this way we can evaluate how much cities have gone forward in order to comply with this threshold. For instance, the cities cities in green will be the best cities because they are closer to fulfill with this. The ones in yellow are the ones in development, and the one in red, we are always thinking in positive. Those are the cities that have got many opportunities for improving. Main results. In the index of cities, this slide allows us to see the average performance in the global of the index due to the dimensions. So the average points in Spain is 50.8% as an average. The best dimension is the one of health and security. And this depends, or this is explained because of the performance of the cities regarding how many people have died in a traffic accident. We have evaluated these indicators at a urban, interurban level, depending on the way of transport. And one of the main findings is that the pedestrians are still the most vulnerable regarding traffic accidents, followed by the deaths linked to the motorcycles and followed by the ones which are from private vehicles, the dimension which are caused by a private vehicle. The offer of services of mobility is the dimension that has reached the best marks. There is an opportunity, the strengthening of these mobility applications regarding the self-management of the mobility. If we had applications that would allow really to locate every incident, every recharge, to know the conditions of accessibility of the stops, of the stations of traffic, we could guarantee that the chain of this accessibility would allow really the location, the capture of every user of the vehicles. And we can also highlight that from the 82 cities we have studied, only 14 consider the perspective of gender in their regulations. Just 16 cities consider or comply with the criteria we have evaluated in this municipal accessibility norm, and more than 60% of the cities we have researched have still the opportunities for improvement regarding also the regulations of transport of wares and goods. Regarding the findings of mobility in the ATPIs, it is worth a while to take into account that there is a gravitatory effect regarding the cities making up these ATPIs, apart from the capitals of provinces. So the opportunity of improving in this sense is really to call upon this interterritorial cohesion, cooperation of the municipalities, and also to offer the necessary services so that transport can be integrated in a system that can be accessible, that can be cheap, and that can be safe and sustainable. It is worth a while to say that aligned with this decarbonization, we have also to give the necessary conditions so that this use is an effective one, and we need also the deployment of this point of electrical recharge of this fleet of vehicles. And in this way, we can accompany the process of decarbonization too. Regarding this accessible mobility, taking into account a scale between 0 and 100, the cities have reached more than 50% as an average. If cities would have complied with this compliance threshold in the 8 indicators, they would have arrived one additional mark of between 1 and 7%. And regarding the COVID impact, we have to take into account that the new database is available thanks to the interventions of the experimental line. They have allowed us to know in detail the average trips thanks to the mobile devices. And however, it is important to take into account that the COVID impact, no doubt about it, is a discontinuity of the patterns of trips during this year. So the passengers transported in a close distance in the last year has experimented a reduction in the year 2020. And regarding the reduction of the internal mobility between November 19 and April 2020, really 90% of the reduction was experimented estimating the trips in city. Regarding the traffic in the airports, we have assessed it is worth taking into account that between February 2020 and May, 46% of these tons of wares were reduced in 98%. Also the number of operations that were carried out in the analysis airports, and in 98% the number of passengers that had been transported just in the period of the first wave of COVID. Regarding the visualizations of results, it's not only complicated to have in a single place the data of this analysis. Therefore, what would you tell me if you knew a technological platform that would make this data available to you? So with the support of some partners, we have developed a platform in the cloud, EDDGO, where you can consult the results of this index of mobility from city to city and ATP. This is more than an observatory. This is rather a tool for the decision making. And we have got 3 sessions of analysis, the open functionalities, when you will find the results of this index of mobility. You can find the technical files in detail of those indicators, the average results, and you could explore the thresholds that have been applied to each indicators. In these tools of management modes, you can do a benchmarking, and you can make the most of this machine learning and to see how some indicators are related to others. So if you want to consult the results of this index in detail, please go to our website and follow us to the social networks. Thank you so much, Jordi and Clara, for your presentation. And then, of course, it has been really exciting for me, maybe because I'm not managing this data every day. It is very clear for me that we still have got a lot to do, and there is a lot of things to do. And then we have got some goals we have to reach. And anytime we are thinking of mobility, or this happens to me, whenever we think of it, we want to improve, to reduce the emissions, buses and cars and lorries. But now we are going to talk about bicycles, because really the service of renting of public bicycles are part of our mobility. And now we are inviting John Alexander Ramirez, who is Director of the Development of International Business of Nextbike, a German company leader in its field in Europe, and they are the providers of the public bicycles of Bilbao. And you are going to talk about the specific case of Colonia. And go ahead, Alexander. Thank you so much to you. Okay, basically what we are bringing here is really the experience that we have acquired with the case of Cologne, where we are going to explore how the utilization of the public transport, taking into account the bicycle as an extension of it, and has got an impact on the city. Okay, I'm going to give a very, very quick presentation of Nextbike. We made a general presentation. We are the European leader of public bicycles. We have got more than 300 cities in the world, more than 26 countries, and a fleet of more than 90,000 bicycles that are operating, and 80% of them are located in Europe. Regarding the case study of Cologne, this is a system that was launched in the year 2015. It's a system that in a very interesting way was launched thinking of being integrated with the public transport. The company we were cooperating with, it is Capopec, which is in Cologne, the company of public transport, and the system was launched with 1,000 bicycles, and it was a really limited region. Nowadays we have got 3,000 bicycles and 100 stations, and we developed a concept as the system was being developed in a very flexible way. The goal was really to extend the public transport in the urban area so it could be more flexible, instead of increasing the infrastructure in places where there is no space. So in this whole blue area, this is the urban center of Cologne, and it is a place where it is very difficult to increase, for instance, bus stations or underground stations, because there is not space available. And we have done that through the integration of bicycles with the public transport. We are making an extension of it, and now I'm going to explain it in depth. And in the outside of the city, this is a system that is bicycles functioning in the stations, and it counts on 400 square kilometers. This is a big area, and right now we have got 3,000 bicycles, and we are going to grow until reach the figure of 7,000. What is interesting in this system, this is a system that is completely integrated in the public transport, but what does this mean? There are different levels of integration, and one very important are the tariffs. The tariffs of the monthly fee or monthly fee of public transport is including the bicycle within this package. So for instance, you can simply use this ticket in the bicycle, and you can use the bicycle as an additional resource, and you have got a kind of integrated ticket. So apart from the bus and the train, you have got the bicycle. Everything is same as a part of the same whole, and the image, I think, is self-explanatory. And I think this is a model of cooperation with Nextpa. We are the operator and also a supplier of technology, and Cafoque, which is really the general image of the system. It is interesting. How do we manage this big data? We talk a lot about big data, and here we are going to try to put this into practice. So in this specific system, a system of public information generates a lot of information. All the bicycles have got the GPS. You can do the tracking. You can do many things. The user leave the comments. There are many interactions with different platforms, and this sums up the interaction that you have got in a system like this, which is totally integrated in the public transport. So on the one hand, you've got the platform, our platform, which is the center, communicating with all these other platforms. Some of them are the apps of mapping, and one of them is Movie. So basically, through this open source data from APIs, they can consume the information of where the bicycles are located, and then to generate algorithms to say, if you take the public transport here, then you can take the bicycle, and then you can take the bus. So this, and apart from this, as the system is integrated in a field level, simply you have to put your card, and everything is integrated here. So this is a system of transport which is really very comfortable for the user. Then we also have got cards, and cards have got their own system, as we all know, the system in the cloud where you have to verify where the card is valid if you have also an abonnement. And so this is in a system that is getting communicated in real time each time that the user puts the card either in the bicycle or in the station, and you identify whether these people have got an abonnement, a valid one for public transport in the bicycle, so they validate the bicycle in this way. And apart from the people who are not directly with an abonnement of public transport, you have got the option just to pay for one trip or for a specific time for bicycles. And there we have got several types of integrations of kinds of payment, where we have got PayPal, App, Google Pay, and this works through APIs, this information system that is transferred in real time, and where all this data is managed in a way that is done in real time. Another interesting topic, I had already commented on it, is a system of fees that is completely integrated in the public transport. The ticket of public transport includes the bicycle, and something really very interesting nobody's talking about. So mobility service, the operator of public transport has also their own mass app, and apart from the public transport, public bicycles that are seen as something single or isolated, you have also scooters, and in order to offer better solutions to the users. And all these things is communicated in a real time. So what you basically do is to transfer all the functions your app has got to an external one through the APIs of different communications. And then there is a topic of reporting. As we have got a contract and we have got a partner which is quite demanding, there are levels of reporting where you must have some management of data at a very big level with a very big detail, and this information is managed in real time, and you send information for going and returning from the databases from the one and from the other, and to understand which is the information and whether you are complying with the things. And this is a very well integrated system. Something very interesting, which is basically a research, is the system of 2015, and this is the new contest that we won it this year. We have started with 3,000 bicycles. Basically, they made an analysis based on the infrastructure we have got in the public transport and the amount of people that were moving in this public transport. They made a mapping based on which are the movements that are made in these green points are the points of the bicycle within the urban area. This is a system of the free load, because what the city is looking for with this striving is to be very flexible so that the person can go from door to door, and that the public transport with the bicycle would be of any help. And last, the operative topic. The system generates a lot of data at an operative level. For instance, where do you have to locate a bicycle? The system of rebalancing. How many bicycles have you got? How many bicycles do you take away? Talking about it in Cologne, this is a little bit more complex, because you do not only have stations, you have areas and you have clusters that are defined by the amount of bicycles that are placed in a certain radius, in a certain area. What we have designed are really levels of radio depending on the demand and the amount of bicycles, and we identified how many bicycles there can be in an area. And in this cluster of radio, we have got, of course, the historical data of the bicycles coming in, coming out, and what we are working on is to have an assessment of how many bicycles there will be in 24 hours, depending on how many are coming, how many are leaving. If there is a negative result, you have to add more. If it is positive, you have to remove some. So it is directly connected with the app. We have got at an operative level that have got the people who are on the street, and they are going to identify, well, in this bicycle I have to move this bicycle because in 2 hours time we're going to have 20 bicycles, in order to adjust them in this way. And last, I think that this is the topic, and we are going to check it in a general way, how that is the system integrated at the level of public transport so that it is totally integrated. We talk about the integration of system, of the APIs, with the mobility service, with a lot of communication among the different platforms. And the fees too. This is also a very important topic. So when you consider a system of public bicycle, you are really considering that it is an extension of it. And then third, the infrastructures, how you can modify either the infrastructure of the city or the infrastructure of the bicycles or stations, with the goal of finding these mobility solutions that in certain places, because of the frequency, cost, the opportunity, it doesn't make any sense to increase the frequency of buses or to create a new underground line, but just to make an extension of a station of public bicycle or on demand. And perhaps we are going to see now how it is made on demand, and the integration of the marketing. So the general image of the systems is considered that BS bicycle is part of it. Okay, and this is the result of the system. And as time has gone by, how the things have been transformed. Of course, with the pandemics, we had a very important impact, and we have to see which are our users and what kind of users we have got. We have a lot of them in Cologne. We have got really 170 users for a fleet of 3,000 bicycles. It is little compared to Barcelona. They have got 7,000, but as they are using the public transport, they do not travel so much. So the first means of transport is the public one, and what they do is to use the bicycle as an extension of it. So we have got the 42% of the users who are students, and in Germany, the students have got a monthly transport ticket integrated within the enrollment fees of the university. Then we have got the German ticket that is specifically for workers, 10%. Those are people who do not have a ticket for the public transport. So just 10% of all the trips of the systems are people who are doing this on occasional basis, or they are tourists. In the 7%, those are special tickets of public transport, so something specific they must have for a company or a group. And last, the monthly abonnements, which are the ones of the system, so just for the public bicycles. Okay. That's it. I hope that it's been interesting. And the idea of considering bicycle as part of the public transport is a case study that really proves that we can achieve good results if you do it well. Thank you. Thank you, John Alexander. Of course, we can achieve very important results, and we have reached them because bicycles are getting more and more used as the ones you have got. And now we invite you to think of your questions. Maybe you already have got your questions in mind, but our email is open to receive your questions for those of you who are following us through the virtual platform, and those of you who are here. We'll open up the microphone after listening to the interventions. Well, now I'm thinking of a first one, of a first question. So all the bicycles have got GPS. We are going to talk about it in order to think about questions. How do we guarantee the ethical use of the data that are being managed? And in order to improve and to make our mobility more sustainable, we have to, I haven't heard, the sound has gone, and now we keep on putting new analysis of big data here, and we are going to invite Ignacio Barrios, CEO of Geodynamics. You're a startup that are working with telephonic data. You're going to talk about the difficulties of big data, how we can be frightened with it, and some of the data.
Movilidad, todo tuyo.
They are talking about mobility, so all is yours. Thank you. I have lost the sound. How are you? Good morning. I'm Ignacio Barrios. I'm the CEO of Aerodynamics. Perhaps you have read El País, the paper El País, an article written by Kiko Llaneras where we analyzed mobility in the island of La Palma and how the eruption of the volcano has affected the surroundings of La Palma. The presence, we detected the arrival of the king and the president. I don't know whether this is good or bad. It has not generated much polemics now, but anyway, I just wanted regarding the big data and the whole movement that there is about the use of data. I don't want to simplify it because I think that we are in a sector that is really thrilling and has got difficulties, and within these difficulties at the time of understanding it, at the time of interpreting it, what it really arises is the value of what we are doing through the company and what technology can allow. I'm going to use three concepts, which are the anormality, also the random character, and the asymmetry. This is what we find when we are managing big volumes of data. And those of you who are considering to use big data and you are using an Excel sheet, this is not big data. We are going to talk about anormality, and it has nothing to do and really this comes first to the concept of normality. When we are talking about transporter behavior, we usually interpret it as a normal distribution of the Gauss bell, which is absolutely tangible. We have got the average, the variety, and so on. Everything is very structured, but we have learned 30 different distributions at the university, but we have forgotten them, and we do not use them, and this is one of the problems. In this case, okay, I have gone too far. One of the recent cases we have been using is the plan of mobility of Galicia with the company Tema GC, where we have analyzed the mobility in Galicia for 6 months, more than 100 areas, so a very powerful project. We are talking about 600 millions of trips. In Spain, we have got 50,000 millions of trips per year in order to capture the idea what we are talking about. So what we did with this was to analyze this in detail, and we used a graphic and we included in it the number of trips made between the origin and destination, and in a period of 6 months. And really what we obtained was this much noise, many details, and thinking, what is happening here? We have got the trips here in the horizontal axis and the variability in the vertical one, so 1,000 per 1,000, so 3 times more trips. And this is called potential law, and we know it now because in the whole COVID, it has been represented in this logarithmic scale. And if we go to a logarithmic scale, we also have got a straight line, and this is the interesting part in the human behavior. Everything having to do with the behavior in network size of cities, behavior in pandemics follows a potential law, and mobility is not an exception. And this makes that if any company or any engineer comes to you with a survey of mobility and data of telephones, so when the data of the mobility is the same as the matrix, then he has copied the survey of mobility, because we are talking here about millions of people, and this is how mobility is represented here, with this noise, with this variability, and with these differences. So having this in mind, bearing this in mind, and with this data, it is very complicated to talk about average days, demands in peak hours, about many concepts, but we have to have this in mind. We have just opened the highway, and it is already overwhelmed by this because of the law of the big numbers and the variability we have got. And here it is where we have got a very important concept, which is this random character. And this was the example of John Alexander. It is very complex to deal with because it is very much linked to the human behavior. These are the bicycle stations or electrical scooters or any other elements that can be included within a station. This code can be made in Bison, in R, and so on. The only thing we have done is to consider a city such as Madrid with 100 stations, 5,000 bicycles, and we've done with a very simple algorithm is what is happening if we take one bicycle from here in a random way in any of the 100 of stations, and we leave it in the other 100 of stations in a random way with no preconditions. The only condition is that if there is no bicycles here, I'm going to the station nearby or next to it. So after doing 1,100 interactions, what does it happen then? Thousands and thousands of trips. So 100,000 trips are just a third of what they are done in Barcelona in one day in the metropolitan area. We are talking about 10, 12 millions of trips per day. What does it happen? It happens this. There are no coincidences in life. Coincidences in life. This is not potential law. So intuition would tell us that bicycles would be allocated in a uniform way, but the reality is that they are concentrated in a massive way in some stations, and there is another number of a very important figure of stations that they are really empty. And this takes place on daily basis, John. I think you can confirm it. So the work these people are doing regarding maintenance and management of these bicycles is really brutal. Moreover, if we add to this the random character and lack of symmetry existing in the symmetry, and this is something real in Madrid, where we have cooperated with a micromobility company, really the options, solutions, and techniques we need are really never-ending, and they require capacities that are not the usual ones we are used to, neither in town halls or in any other companies. We achieved in this case, in this specific one, to increase the use of the electrical scooters in Madrid in 150%, locating the scooters. That was a free-floating lower duplex. So we really achieved to increase the use, taking them to areas where there was a potential demand that was bigger than the one that had been perceived initially. And now, if we are talking about lack of symmetry or asymmetry, not all of us move in the same way. This is important. We have to highlight this. Not all of us move in the same way, also in consecutive days, and this is important to take into account when we are talking about sustainability and inclusivity, and we'll see now why. These two maps show, on the one hand, the radio of mobility of the Madrid community, understood in a simple way, and looking at in what circle your daily activity is in a radio of mobility of 1 kilometer. So your whole life goes around just 1 kilometer around your home. This is the general concept. And the other map shows the acquisition power in a normal way. There is a lot of symmetry. There is a correlation, which is quite important in this case. We cannot see it from here. We cannot see the screen from here. The issue is that this apparent symmetry, it becomes a brutal asymmetry. And Josu is smiling because we saw this during the dinner when we see where people go to. And this is something amazing, because we see that 68% of the segment, number one, the people, well-off people or wealthy people, above 25,000 euros per member of the family. We are talking about less than 10,000 and between 10,000 and 25. 68% of the trips of the people who are wealthy have got their origin or destination in areas of which are wealthy too. So the rich people never get mixed with the poor people. So this is Miles. Okay, from the political point of view, I think this is an issue that can really provoke a smile, but this is a very serious issue. We see an 8%, and the most interesting thing is that when it is the other way around, the poorest people go to richer areas. So, for instance, cleaning ladies, people who are dealing with services of first needs in certain areas. This is important to bear this in mind when we are creating a new line of bus or of underground, to know whom we are giving this service. So the lack of symmetry do not end here. Who move more, women or men? Women. Women. Men, you say men. It is not that they move more, they move farther. This is the difference. They move farther. So if we are developing an infrastructure of a long or medium distance, we are favoring the mobility of men. And if we are generating a short distance one, we are favoring the female one. This is important in order to plan any kind of public service. More asymmetries. Age, older people move much less. This is interesting because this is the evolution. So this peak is what has happened here. It happened as Spain was confined, was locked down for 3 months. So this is not a mistake in the data. So mobility really plummeted, and then of course started again during the summer. And how, although we have got a certain normality, older people, 60s, 70s, still haven't recovered the level of mobility they used to have before the pandemics. And this is very important also from the point of view of social inclusivity. We had already seen this, sorry. This is the economic part, and this is a discussion we have already had why the lowest incomes didn't reduce their mobility as much during the pandemics, fundamentally because they had to render essential services. So, for instance, people working in supermarkets, healthcare services, logistical services, while the higher incomes could afford to work in a remote way and reduce their mobility in a 50%. What happened in summer, the rich people went on holiday and they increased or they doubled their mobility they had in the pandemics. This is very funny. This had been published. This is not hidden. There are many articles. If you search for them on the internet, next time that any new urban development has been planned or any new underground line, you must bear in mind all the lack of asymmetries that take place. And because of the fact that we are favoring the mobility of a few, we are really damaging the mobility of others. And the question is whether you are afraid by the big data or not. And I am open to any question you can pose. And thank you so much. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much. We are impressed by all the data you have offered to us. We have to go on and talking about the data they can offer. Now we have got Antea Treco, partnership of Italian, and you are going to talk about how difficult it can be the analysis of this data, and with your software you can really pose some changes in the public network and make it more efficient. Can you listen to me? Thank you so much. Okay, we are with experts or talk to us. I think that, well, some people are already drinking the coffee. So, Alessia Dreco, I am responsible of Parsevia, which is a company of technology in many cities of the world, analyzing transport and demand, and we plan transport too. And what we have been talking about today. Now. Okay, we see that in the computer, but not here. I think there are other people that can help you too. Okay, have a look at it now. Good. So, what we have been talking about today, about all the topic of this event, which is so important nowadays to change the mobility, and in order to be more accessible, and in order to do this, we have also to take into account the data, not only to find the data, but also to understand how to use them. And I have been working in Telefonica for 7 years, and it is something different in big data, using data of transport, of mobile technology, in order to understand how people go to other places. And I was in Latin America, when I was talking with cities, with operators, they told me, well, it seems to be incredible, but what can I do with this data, and how to analyze the data, how to use them. This is a very important topic. And what I wanted to tell you is to explain you some tools that we were using in VIA in order to help cities to analyze the data and to adapt solutions that are more favorable. So what I wanted to explain to you is, on the one hand, how to visualize and how to analyze the data in a better way, how also to put in a simple way or to implement changes and to see which is the impact of these changes, and then how to communicate these changes to the population. This is also a critical topic. And then I would like to introduce the concept of transport on demand, because what we have seen today is that the main problem is that that has got worse with the COVID is the transport in private vehicles that is increasing. So it is very important to offer solutions that can be more comfortable, so that people can really start using the public transport and not the private vehicle. As a first point, just to visualize and to analyze data of transport in a better way, I wanted to talk about the tools that we are using with Remix. Remix is a company that is part of VIA, and it's a visual platform that is supporting cities and operator and is helping to modulate the urban mobility. How do we do this? Here we have got the platform of Remix, and we have loaded here the data of Bilbao. And as you can see, this is a tool, and there are also others. And I wanted to show you how we do it. That is allowing in very few sessions to load the data of transport in the platform and see it in a very simple way. Not only that, but also to see all the lines, to calculate and see all the information of each line. And this is and here we have got a line of transport, and in very few seconds we can modify it and to see in real time which the impact of this modification is, so that we can see in very few seconds how many vehicles do we need with this road, which is the additional cost. And we can also load data of the demography and to see which the impact of this data is. So each change of the route, which is the impact on the population, on housing, in the older people, and all the data that we want to add to it. And also, another thing we have been talking about before is the accessibility. It is very important at the time of living in a private vehicle to understand how much time I need to arrive at my destination. And another thing we can visualize in Remix is a road map. So there is a person that can be placed in any home, or it can be also a hospital. How long does it take this person to reach the destination with the public transport? So we have got in blue 20 minutes, then 40, 60, so we can go see that in a very visual way with public transport. And this can be used in order to compare it with a private vehicle and to see how some changes modify the network of transport and its accessibility. And then the other topic is, once we have measured the impact of a change and we decide to make these changes, how we modify them, or whether there are deviations, how can we communicate them to the passengers, or, and this is another way of communicating in a very simple way to the citizens, the changes that there are in a transport area. And this, for instance, is a screen. of the computer of New York, and in Twitter they put everyday images that are taken out from Remix, deviations, changes, so that the citizens can see in a very simple way how to use the public transport. And at the time of using this more frequently is very important too. And the other topic I wanted also to introduce is the transport with after the demand of it. How can you help the operators and citizens to launch a more comfortable system of transport, more comfortable for the citizens? Instead of having a fixed route, you have to walk 15 minutes to wait 1 hour. Maybe I have to take my car and I won't have to use the public transport. If we are able to launch solutions that allow a bigger flexibility, what I can do is really to take the vehicle in my home. I have my mobile phone and I can be in a very quick way in my destination. And this can increase the use of public transport in 3-4 times. And we have seen this in many cities where we have been working. So it's a very important tool. And in this way, what we are doing through this Remix tool is to measure not only the fixed way of transport, but also the one in demand. So in a city where you can launch in which areas you can launch this transport on demand, and which can be the parameters based on the number of passengers, which could be the average waiting time, how many vehicles do we need for this kind of transport, and how to integrate this in a fixed line. And all the part of planning, of simulation is very important too. So how to analyze the data and how to simulate ways of transport before launching it is also a very important topic. So what we do here in VIA is this. We have a tool of simulation, and we help many cities to understand what the impact of the transport on demand can be before launching it. These are some kinds of transport on demand, for instance, that we have to take into account when launching a service of transport on demand. One of them is a case of a rural area when there is no public transport, and a public transport of the fixed network can be very efficient, but the one on demand can be very useful, or in the periphery of a city, or even in a urban area. And also in the last mile, the transport at night, it's very important because of topics of safety, type of vehicle, size of the area, size of the fleet. These are some of the partners we work with, but there are many cases of use, and it's important to understand which case of use we need and where does it function best. And then, and I'm almost finishing, I don't want to bore you too much, the part of launching the services. At the time of launching the services, it's important to define how to launch them. So to identify the size and the right shape of the area, the kind of right vehicle for this service, and to identify the fees, promotions, offers, and to define the quality of the services. We have got very big services, such as in Berlin with 200 vehicles, and very small ones. And in each service, really it has to be customized in a different way and has to be built in a different way based on the citizens and their needs. And then it is also important to analyze the data in a continuous way, in a cycle. So it's important to identify the metrics, the fees of usage, the fees of utilization, the waiting time, and I cannot let people waiting for 1 hour for a vehicle. The service must be very efficient. Here, we have got an example of a service that we have launched in Tenerife this year. We have been working with TITSA and with the Cabildo, and we launched the service in a rural area of the island. And it's very interesting because what we did is to load on Remix all the data of origin and destination, and we can analyze in this way who has used the service to go to where, from which area, at what time of the day. This is very important to understand, which is the case of use, why people are using them. And in this case, there are many old people that in this rural area didn't know how to travel. They had to wait for the son, for the daughter to take them to the city, and in this way they could travel in a more independent way. So the idea is really to keep on analyzing the data, to use the data to plan the transport, and also to launch the service of transport to generate data and to improve the service and to make a feedback of the whole system. So that's it. That's it, really. That's what we do. That's the specialization we have. But any questions? Here I am. Glad to answer. Thank you so much. Andrea, thank you so much to you for your presentation. Really, we are receiving many questions, but now we do not have time to answer to all of them. In any case, the questions that are still pending to be posed and to be answered through the virtual platform, you can connect with all the lecturers to obtain an answer. Here we are with the message. I don't know whether there are some questions here, but the microphone is open. So for those of you who are in the room, you can post any questions here in this Jauregia room. I cannot listen to that gentleman. I cannot translate the question. This is not a question. I haven't heard it. He wasn't using the microphone. We do have questions specifically to lever how the next generation funds can help the decarbonization. We have got a microphone there. Or if you want to come here directly, Josu, as you like it, as you prefer. Doesn't work? Yeah, it does work. As I have taken off my jacket, I'm answering from here, so it's gonna be more informal. So if you can look at the public keys. The answer is, okay, I'm standing up. The answer is the same to the things I have been mentioning at the very beginning. How can these funds help? How can money help the money we are spending, both public and private, in this decarbonization? If we devote it to the technological transition of the engines, of this electrical combustion, I have told you what we have to do. What do we have to devote our money if we want to decarbonize mobility? To anything that it can reach, that we use less our private vehicles and we use more other kind of mobility modalities. What do we have to do for this to happen? Even though I had limited my share of political incorrection after the wine and the coffee, no matter I have heard that in this Congress and in all Congresses I'm attending from the year 92, the policies and the investments of stimulation of public transport, of bicycle, of infrastructure, of pedestrian infrastructure never achieve the fact that we as drivers abandon the private vehicle and use another modality. All these investments are essentials and are indispensable, but are not enough at all. So the carrot, I know, especially the Basque Country, Bilbao, we have been spending in the last 30 years how many millions in public transport, something marvelous. So the carrot, the city is nicer and nicer. We have spent a lot having public spaces, nice for the pedestrian, for the citizen, and even for that driver that is a pedestrian for a while. So we improve the city, we improve the public transport until limits we haven't expected. So in Bilbao, we have done it later than Vitoria and San Sebastian, but we have got bicycles on the streets. So have we achieved drivers to leave, to abandon their private vehicles? So therefore, let's keep on spending on cars, but until we do something with the sticks, transformation doesn't happen, decarbonization doesn't happen, the reduction of energy consumption in transport and mobility does not take place. The change of behavior is not enough, although we can measure the accessibility. These analyses are really very, very important. But if in those times, in that crown, for instance, this gentleman that is at the center of Leioa, and he would have calculated how many minutes do I need for the public transport. He would need 30 minutes in public transport for the distance he would cover in 12 with a car. We cannot compete with that. We are not going to make public transport more sexy for the driver than his own private vehicle. When I'm listening to the radio or my podcast, some people are even watching videos of YouTube, some colleagues of mine. We are not going to achieve that this gentleman who feels so at ease in his comfortable vehicle will abandon his car, because timetable is the one he determines, temperature is the one he determines. So is there a public transport able to compete with that? No. It doesn't matter what we say. No. We have got to start acknowledging, and these are not expensive measures, but they are politically incorrect, and the citizens do not want to face them. And we need the political courage and also a social agreement, acknowledging that we are going against the health, against the planet. So our mission is totally important, and we are going to invest money in technology, in improving infrastructures, public transport, something very important. So answering, what do we have to spend the money on? Shall I say it again? No. Okay, thank you, Josu. Thank you. Josu and the rest of the lecturers and the public, thank you so much for their participation with the questions. It's been very interesting to share this meal with you, with all of you. We have to stop it now, the streaming. We are going to come back in a quarter of an hour, 4:15, because soon Bilbao goes on today and tomorrow. Thank you so much. See you then. Bye.